Hi everyone, welcome. Out here on the bench, as you can see, I've got a couple yellow buckets. These are yellow buckets number 3, and right next door, bucket number 4. My buckets number 1 and 2 are in the set it and forget it experiment. Those things, we haven't checked on those like for almost 2 months now. But here we're committed to regular check-ins, treating them like any other of my worm composting systems, just in buckets rather than the traditional tubs that I usually use. And we were super generous with leaves last time. Usually when I go in with leaves, I don't bother soaking them or anything. They just went in here dry. And you know, if we had a top over here, something other than paper, you know, this might have been a sign for me to bump into this and knock it over. I deliberately placed it on the bench next to me so I don't forget, because I did spot a flying insect, and you know, now might be the time before our absent-minded worm farmer forgets to add it. I just figured I'd do a little treatment with the mosquito dunks, even though it was only a single flying insect I noticed. So I'm just going to really quickly drop a little bit into each system just so I don't have to forget about it and regret it later. So back to bin number 3. Here, it's like I had to dig quite a way down through these leaves to get access to the material below, but the material's got a nice moisture content to it. Anytime I take a large amount of dry stuff like this and add it to one of my systems, I worry that it's going to have this sort of sponge effect and draw a lot of the neighboring moisture into itself, leaving material that might have been comfortable enough for the worms to be in suddenly too dry. But I don't see that happening here. The moisture level's quite nice down low. You know, I think just in response to that specific concern, yeah, that's how I ended the last check-in. I did actually pour in a certain amount of moisture with the assumption that it would simply drain right to the bottom and sit down there. I didn't know if it would end up becoming standing water, or if it would soak in or get utilized by the worms or what. But I think for that reason it makes sense to probe to the bottom. In the past, when I've run these buckets, I've gotten them so full that it was unheard of to be able to make it to the bottom without having the excavated hole collapse on you. So it seems to me like these worms down low are either in it for the enjoyment of the moisture. I mean, that could be a good explanation for it. Or maybe there was a chunk of food down there that they were all huddling around. I see chubby worms and I see tiny baby juvenile worms. Nice mix of big and small, and a good density of them. So, I think we've verified that going down to the bottom is not revealing a sopping wet mess. It's actually quite nice from the moisture perspective. And you know, now that we've excavated this big hole, I do like the idea of blending in all this leafy matter as we go. So why don't we do that? I noticed leftovers as I excavated, though. Here we have a banana peel with the stem on it, and I think there were others that I bumped into along the way, other banana stems. And guess what? Today's feeding includes a whole lot of banana peels, mainly banana peels. There's a little bit of strawberry and mango peels, a couple other little random things in there, but for the most part, oops, look at this little guy, dropped off my hand and ended up on the tablecloth. Luckily I noticed it and remedied the situation. So, alright. I think it's fair to expect that a similar outcome occurred over in bucket number 4, where I did the same thing. You know, I just took my water and poured it in, which is a little uncharacteristic of me. I typically apply moisture in particle form, if I can, through the sprayer. But it did seem to me like the moisture would eventually get put to good use by the system, and that I don't need to be concerned about blending it all in. at this point, it just seems like a good idea to get all this leafy matter combined with the rest of the material in here. I'll tell you, for a 40-day-old system, 42-day-old system that is, there seems to be a huge accumulation of nice material in here. I mean, just because it's dark, I'm suddenly seeing it as just a big bunch of vermicompost, and in a way it is, I guess, to a certain degree, but there's still a lot of bedding material blended in here. But I do like the way this stuff looks now that we've combined a whole bunch of leafy matter with what's in here already. I don't know if this would actually trigger what concerned me, what I talked about earlier, was a bunch of dry material going in, possibly sucking the nearby moisture into itself, leaving the overall environment too dry at that point for the worms to be comfortable. So I don't know if that's the case. I've got that same jug of water that I used last time. I figured if we had to, we can just come in here and pour in more. So I, let's see, 1, 2, I think it's like 3 banana peels per system, plus a nice big paper towel or a napkin. Oh, and coffee. This bundle of coffee actually did end up in my freezer accidentally. I never freeze coffee. Doesn't seem like it's necessary to do so. But here, we'll set this one aside. So 3. Yeah, here's number 3 banana peel. So I think these worms are gonna go crazy for all this banana peel. I mean, they've already got traces of it being fed in here last time, so they've already got kind of a taste for it, I would assume. And well, like I said, there's other stuff in here, but not much. We'll throw them a little bit of mango and perhaps a strawberry, but I'll keep the rest of this, as well as the other 3 banana peels. There we go. It's a pretty nice feeding. I thought maybe it could be a little bit more generous, but since this system here got that frozen jumble of coffee, I'm not going to apply as much coffee here. The next system we do, number 4, we can use up a bit more of this. This is almost full, so we can be pretty generous. And, I did place a piece of paper down beneath the feeding, but we haven't really given them much bedding, so why don't we top off here by coating their lovely feeding with some of my prepared bedding this time. That was a pretty generous handful, but I think I could come in here with even another. Yeah, that to me looks really nice. And I'm still debating on what to do with moisture. I mean, I could do the exact same thing I did last time, which is just to pour in a certain amount. Hard to say how much I dispensed last time. I just came in with this water and maybe gave it a little splash like that, I don't know. Is that a cup? Cup's worth of fluid with the, let's give it a little more, with the presumption that it's going to benefit the system, because perhaps things are a little bit at risk of going dry because of all that dry bedding I placed in there. But I think we're in good shape here with bucket number 3. Check out the level. Now that the system got aerated and stuff was added, it's a lot higher than bucket 4, but bucket 4 is going to get the same treatment. We'll do a good aeration and stirring in of the materials, but here we're going to base some of our activity on certain assumptions that these systems are probably operating almost identically to each other, since they were launched the same day, managed the same way, and have very similar sized populations. It's nice to see worms occupying all this stuff, but it does concern me a little bit that this dry material is suddenly getting blended in. I don't think it's going to create a dangerous situation for the worms, especially since I'm going to be pouring in that couple cups of water at the end. That stuff will go down to the bottom, and the worms, if they need it, will probably know enough to dive down looking for it, and there it'll be. But now we've done a nice job incorporating a whole bunch of leafy matter. And I've just stumbled something on I've just stumbled on something here, which I'm quite amazed that we didn't locate when we were rummaging through bucket 3. Because these are the systems in which we had gourds. Very large gourds. Finally breaking apart and cracking into little pieces, I think. So these are chunks of the same gourd. No, that one's a little one, a smaller one with a thinner sidewall, I think. But it seems amazing to me that I went through bucket 3 and totally didn't even encounter anything that reminded me of gourds. Wow, that's incredible. Because they're, you know, big chunks like this. However, wow, look at that. These things were like rock hard and thick, super thick gourds. And especially this one. This was the biggest one with the thickest walls. And I can't believe that I was able to just, you know, with one hand, press on it with perhaps even just one finger, whatever it was, and crush what is probably the toughest part of it, that little tiny lobe, that little pocket at the end. The fact that I was able to crush that stuff is fantastic. So wow, okay, that's so cool. I wonder if anyone has been kind of on it in terms of paying close attention to the gourds and was already ahead of the curve on this while I was kind of in la land. concerning myself with moisture and bedding. Totally spaced out on these gourds. I mean, these gourds are super old at this point. They've been in process of breakdown for a very long time. And the fact that they're actually finally breaking that way is pretty incredible. But I think we're gonna try to get this check-in completed because, I mean, got to admit, it was pretty disruptive, or at least it seemed that way to me, tilling everything up. Not to mention the introduction of so much dry material. I would have to guess if there's some form of communication happening here between the wormies. They're probably not too pleased with suddenly being surrounded by a whole bunch of super dry stuff. So I'm anxious to get a couple splashes of water down in here for these little guys too as soon as possible, but we've got to give them everything bucket 3 got, just so we could be fair. I think that pretty much gets us to the point where both systems are pretty equal. I'm now glancing over to bucket 3 and it does seem like, yeah, the level's about the same or pretty close. But before we cover up, let's drop in a little bit of moisture, you know, right there. Good opportunity to rinse off my glove and create a big muddy mess for you guys. How do you like that? All right. Well, I've obviously got a couple things to take care of getting cleaned up and put away over here, but I'm not going to waste time with that. That's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.